Senator Kevin Cramer recounts his experience attempting to question Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheatle at the RNC. Here's One America's John Hines.
Yes, we're here with Senator Kevin Cramer from North Dakota. Sir, you had a very interesting video. I think it's gone viral. You and a couple of your Senate colleagues actually confronted the head of Secret Service. I think her name is Kimberly Cheatle. She was here at the convention hall, I believe. Yeah. And I think this came either before or after that conference call where you're trying to get some answers about the assassination attempt of President Trump. What happened with your encounter with the head of Secret Service?
So the telephone briefing was a few hours prior to us realizing she's actually in Milwaukee. And so we thought, well, let's go get the answer to one very simple question, John. And that was, given the timeline that they've laid out, understanding that a good 20 minutes prior to the president being shot at, the Secret Service had already identified a possible threat on the top of the roof 150 yards away from the stage. And we're looking into it, and local police were investigating. But they knew that there was a potential threat. They had announced there was a potential threat. They had already even informed the counter sniper unit that there was a possible threat on a rooftop, and yet they allowed President Trump to go on stage. And then within a couple of minutes of the actual shooting, there was even more information, and they let him stay on stage. And so to me, it was just a basic question that the world's asking.
And you were confronting the head of Secret Service. She was here in the stadium at the convention, and you guys went and found her wherever she was in one of the skyboxes, right? That's
right. She said, I'm going to go. I'm going to leave now. And we said, great, well, let's go. We'll go with you, and then you can answer these questions. And she walked out with a security detail, obviously, and began to walk very quickly towards stairways, up the stairway, and we're like, is she running away from us? Honestly, are you kidding me? I mean, and it's not like she's a super high level, appointee or something. And she just wouldn't talk to United States senators. Did not want to answer a very simple question. So we followed her all the way right to you've seen the video, right to a door that was opened up by Secret Service. She was pushed into it. They surrounded her into this room, closed the door as I was trying to follow her in so we could have this discussion. And I said, so that's it then, huh? And this security guard said, that's it.
So a U.S. Senator got door knocked by the head of the Secret Service?
I guess he did. I just, as I said, I just wish Donald Trump would have had this kind of security detail. They may have prevented him from getting shot, but they did a great job of preventing her from talking to United States senators and asking obvious and simple questions.
Does that make your blood boil or what?
Well, my blood doesn't boil that easily. I'm generally pretty mild-mannered. In fact, I even went into the meeting very mild-mannered. I was, I had a hard time getting a word in edgewise. But her lack of response does irritate me because it's so disrespectful on the one hand to the people that she's subordinate to, and secondly, just how disrespectful it is to the American public who really want answers. In fact, probably one of the most important points during the conference call with her a few hours earlier, her and Christopher Wray from the FBI, was that, and by the way, it was a Democratic senator that made this point, it's really important for you to provide true information very quickly because the public wants to know, and they deserve to know the facts surrounding that situation in Butler, Pennsylvania. And everybody seems to agree that that's important, except the director of Secret Service, who either doesn't know, which is, by the way, a plausible possibility because I think she is quite a bit over her head, quite honestly. I didn't know her from a hole in the head before, but she is clearly out of her element. When you don't have the awareness to understand, there are 4 United States senators, including members of the Homeland Security Committee, asking you a simple question, that you're supposed to answer it or accommodate it somehow, rather than just run from it. You're in over your head.
So let's be clear, you confronted her in the convention center because you found out she was there in one of the skyboxes. You approached her, and she basically evaded you. She ran away from 4 U.S. senators asking her questions about what happened, basic questions about what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania. Is that right?
That's exactly right. Not complicated, not devious, not manipulative, just simple questions.
Was the phone call, was it a Zoom call or a phone call, conference call?
It was just audio, given how spread out we all are.
Was that helpful at all? Was it...
You know, it was helpful in the sense that I think we got more specifics on the timeline of events. Remembering it was both a Secret Service and a FBI combined briefing. She really said nothing during the briefing. She just said we failed. It was a clear failure, and here's the deputy to tell you all about it. And then Christopher Wray gave a much more thorough review of briefing of the FBI's role following the assassination attempt, which included, you know, what they're doing to investigate the shooter, his family, his universe, his social media, all of that obvious stuff, which will take much longer to unravel than the simple question of the timeline. So the timeline was helpful. I think it's been out there a bit. They went a little more minute by minute, so we had a little more detail. But then they opened it up for questions, and Chuck Schumer got the first one. John Cornyn got the second one, then two more Democrats, and then that was that. They were done, and nobody asked the question about, but what happened in the 20 minutes? How come the president was allowed on the stage or not taken off of the stage? And they cut off the questions before that could be asked.
I think you guys have asked for hearings. The Democrats, of course, run the Senate, and so what's been the response?
It's hard for me to imagine that Chuck Schumer and Democrats could run from this responsibility, that they could further stonewall the American public for information. We need to exercise our oversight as a Senate, and I think that there are enough Democratic senators that are either politically very concerned, as they ought to be, or sincerely concerned, which they ought to be, that we should be able to get that done.
You're a U.S. Senator. You remember probably 1974, Hugh Scott and Barry Goldwater and John Rhodes, I think from the House, went down to the White House and they explained Richard Nixon that he lost confidence amongst the Republicans on Capitol Hill. Is that going to happen to Joe Biden soon here, or is that basically happening now?
I think it's happening now. I don't know that it's happening in that much of a confrontational way or a frontal way because I think Joe Biden is so defiant. And for the few minutes a day that he's coherent, he seems to be very strong and demanding that he's going to stay in this race forever. But I do think as you see, the wagons circling, and you see him, well, let's face it, now has the convenience of being quarantined for a while. It just seems to me that it's unraveling for them, and that however they engineer it, it just doesn't seem to me that he can be their nominee going forward, but we'll see.
Finally, J.D. Vance, last night, big speech. What's your over-under on that?
Well, I thought J.D. was really good last night, to be honest, and I think he like Donald Trump, was speaking to Republicans for sure, but to the broader public in the United States of America, and his emphasis on working class Americans, what Donald Trump has done for working class Americans, and what they intend to do for working class Americans, that emphasis on real people. I mean, I don't, I know JD fairly well, not super well, but I've served with him now for a little while. When he introduced his mom, I mean, I'm thinking, I suppose you could go to Hollywood and cast a bunch of really super actors to play this role, except it's real. It's like real. And I think that is going to resonate so well with the American public, and not just MAGA Republicans or populists, if you will, but for people who have been struggling for a long time, not just in the Biden inflation, hyperinflation, high interest rate era either, throughout life. And so, I don't know that he could have done it any better. He's very gifted, as you know, but he's also very smart, and his real-life experience is hard to argue with.
Very good. Some unvarnished political convention analysis from Kevin Cramer.
It's always unvarnished, John. I know you know that.
That's the way North Dakotans are, right?